Okay, welcome everybody. Uh, let's see, are people seeing the NMOA website screen? Is that showing? Yes? Okay, great. Hi, welcome everybody. My name's Jennifer Griffith and I work at NMOA, which is the Northeast Waste Management Officials Association. We are an interstate association of the 6 New England states, New York and New Jersey, the solid waste programs, the hazardous waste programs, the toxics use reduction and pollution prevention programs, and then also the waste site cleanup programs in those 8 states. And the priority for the waste site cleanup programs is to do through NMOA is training. And so that's what we're doing here today. PFAS has been a hot topic since 2016, and there's always more and more to know and learn on it. So today we're focused on wastewater treatment plants and looking at inputs to those and trying to address that. So we've got 2 great presenters. And I'm showing you the NMOA website here because I want to let everybody know where you can find information about other events. So, NMOA.org, events, and then here's all it's very future looking facing website. So it's things that are coming up and you can look and see what's coming up, including other webinars on PFAS that are in the future, as well as the one today. But the PDFs of the presentations from today will be posted, and finding those, you can, this little secret arrow here, because remember, everything's going forward, what is the default. So to go back in time, you can click that little arrow there, and then you can look backwards. So, and it's of course the farthest back that fits on the screen. So the most recent past is down here at the bottom. So we did one on risk communication a couple weeks ago. And so you can find the PDF of that presentation and more information about it there. And then the other ones that we've had so far as well. And again, it's not waste site cleanup or PFAS specific here. It's also, all different topics that fit under NMOA. So here's a bunch of solid waste ones as well. So I just wanted to show everybody that. So like I said, PDFs of the presentations will be posted on the NMOA website. And we have a lot of people on the webinar today. So please type in questions. You can type them in at any point. You don't have to wait until we officially break for questions. So just type them in as they come up. And then we are doing a new thing with this webinar series in that we are getting licensed site professional continuing ed credits for Massachusetts licensed site professionals. So if you are a Massachusetts licensed site professional, that's the only kind of certificates and continuing ed credits we're doing, then, and you want to get credits for this webinar, you need to do a few things. You need to stay on the webinar all the way to the end. You must be not doing other stuff during the webinar. So just for everybody's general knowledge, go to Webinar Can Tell if the webinar is not the top thing on your computer. So if you're like doing emails and doing other stuff, go to Webinar Can Tell. So you have to keep the webinar and you can just click it on the screen there with when the slides are showing or whatever, and that will make the webinar at the top of your screen. And if you want the LSP credits, you really have to have almost the whole webinar at the top of your screen. You can't be doing other stuff. Also, we are going to have some poll questions during the webinar today, and you need to answer all of the polls. And you need to respond to all the polls. And then also, you should type in at least one question during the webinar. Hopefully it's relevant and a good question, but you just have to type something in as a question. And then I did edit the registration form more recently to put a question in if you want LSP credits for the webinar. But if you registered a long time ago, then and that question wasn't part of the registration, you need to make sure you email me afterwards so that I know that you want the LSP credits and the certificate. So I hope that made sense. We are, again, going to post PDFs of the presentations after the webinar, probably sometime next week. And at any point during the webinar, you should be typing in questions. So with that, I'm going to stop blabbing and I'll introduce our first presenter, which is Logan Hayes. He's an environmental science with California Department of Toxic Substances Control. He and the Safer Consumer Products Program. He earned his bachelor. Okay, we're in slideshow mode, so you need to just get it in, presenter mode, just got to get it on you can go to the display settings in the middle there and just click on one of those and it should get rid of just go to that middle one, the display settings with the little down arrow, and just pick either one of them. When you click on that, it should get you out of presenter mode.
Yeah, I'm just swapping it since now that there's a third monitor. Actually, I'll just do this.
Okay, so we're still seeing the presenter mode. Okay, so I'll continue introducing Logan and hopefully he can fix this so we can see the slides. Okay, he earned his Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a Master of Science in Toxicology from Colorado State University. Logan worked in healthcare before he shifted over to combat disease via regulatory toxicology and green chemistry. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera off and mute myself and take it away, Logan. It looks like we're good. Okay, Logan, I'm not hearing you though. Shoot. Are other people hearing him?
Not yet. I am just flipping things around. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now, and it looks like the presentation is up. So hopefully it's good.
Perfect. You add another monitor and it changes everything around.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. My name is Logan Hayes. I am an environmental scientist with the Consumer Products Program and the Department of Toxic Substances Control at California EPA. And today we are going to be talking about cosmetics and how they contribute to the PFAS load at wastewater treatment plants in California's dense urban environments. So as you probably know, if you've come here today, that PFAS are virtually everywhere. They're in so many products, it's hard, or it's quite the challenge to even name them all. Some of which are, I think, more surprising and some of which are less surprising. Some sources, of PFAS exposure come from products that have, I think, what we might consider these like stereotypical PFAS functional roles, such as like, imparting water and oil resistance to products. These are, like non-stick cookware, food containers, protectants for fabrics, furniture, carpets, and rugs, so that stains quite literally roll off the material. Other products that have PFAS might be a bit more surprising, and it's not always easy to find what their function is. These might include, paints, electronics, solar panels, and then the subject of today's conversation, which is cosmetics. So because of the myriad products that contain PFAS for various functions, the exposure pathways are just as numerous, many more times even, because of the hundreds to thousands of different products that they're in, the various ways that we're exposed to them, all the various media that they can travel through. And if you were to map the entire exposure scenario, it'd be quite the challenge. Today, however, we're more focused on cosmetics and how they are related to the PFAS load of wastewater and wastewater treatment plants. So what we know is that wastewater treatment plants do receive a PFAS load. We know that wastewater includes water that goes down the drain. And we know that water that goes down the drain includes many cosmetics and personal care products. What's important to note that is a recent study by Fano et al. Found that no relationship between the amount of industrial flow received, or that there was no relationship between the amount of industrial flow received by Bay Area wastewater treatment plants and concentrations of targeted PFAS or perfluoroalkyl acid precursors or pre-PFAAs and their influence, highlighting the importance of non-industrial sources such as household products. And so herein lies the problem in determining what that relationship really is. And so the question that we asked is, how much of the PFAS load measured at wastewater treatment plants can be attributed to cosmetics, also called personal care products? So on the screen now, you're seeing kind of a flow chart of our process, of our methodology to identify the PFAS that are intentionally added ingredients in cosmetics. So to do this, we started with product ingredient databases, such as Skin Deep, Clearia, the CPID, the FDA's VCRP, and the Mintel GNPD, which you might know simply as Skin Deep, Clearia, CPID, the VCRP, and then Mintel, if you've used any of these databases before. So we use those to find which PFAS are used as intentionally added ingredients in products. We removed the inorganic fluorinated compounds and made sure that they all adhered to the OECD PFAS definition, which is fluorinated substances that contain at least one fully fluorinated methyl or methylene carbon atom. And then we wanted to make sure for the rest of the analytics that they were associated with at least one or more CAS number, that they were not a primary, or that their primary function was not a propellant, because if they were a propellant, we assumed that because they're volatile, they would not reach the wastewater treatment plant via the water, and so they wouldn't really be relevant to our analysis. And that left us with about 45 PFAS names potentially used as ingredients. We removed 4 because they were considered propellants. 1 that was called fluoroaliphatic polymeric esters, which we basically couldn't find a structure, couldn't find any additional information. So we removed it because we wouldn't be able to do any further analysis that was necessary. And then we used the Mintel and Skin Deep product databases to find if those ingredients were listed in any of those products. And that left us with 40 total PFAS to use for the rest of our subsequent calculations. So to review the entire PFAS universe, which is of course a simplification because it's a very complicated and large group of chemicals. On the screen, we've broken it down into 3 groups. We have on the left, we have the perfluoroalkyl acids. In the middle, we have pre-PFAAs, that are chemicals that can break down into perfluoroalkyl acids. And then on the right, we have fluoropolymers, and then basically the rest. The 2 groups on the right, the pre-PFAAs and the fluoropolymers, tend to be what are used in products. However, what we typically measure are these chemicals on the left. And so that creates a problem that we kind of had to get around to do the calculations. And one of the tools that allowed us to do this is data from top assays, or total oxidizable precursor assays. What top assays do is they cleave these side chains off from these PFAS and basically make PFAAs using an oxidative reaction and transform them into PFAAs. And so what we can then do is calculate the side chains from this middle group that are generally used in products by taking the top assay results, which includes all of the PFAAs before and after, minus the PFAAs before the reaction, and then that calculates the side chains in the center group. That tells us, kind of in a backwards sense, the data that we really care about, these side chains that are used in the products, in the cosmetics. So that's how we're able to take the data that's available and get to the data. Another way we can do this is using data from extractable or absorbable organic fluorine. We can compare that to the organic fluorine in our calculations using the structures. And so ultimately, the problem was that what we measure is very different from what we use in products. And so the only way to determine what proportion of PFAS in wastewater treatment plants is from cosmetics is to calculate it. And so we were able to compare the top assay data from wastewater with the mass of the fluorinated side chain groups in the cosmetics, and then compare the total fluorine with organic fluorine from the cosmetics. And so to get to this, we used data from the cosmetics sold in California during a 1-year period in 2019 to 2020. So we could calculate the total mass of PFAS ingredients, the organic fluorine, and the fluorinated side chains. So to do this, we needed to calculate a bunch of things first, basically. We needed to get a bunch of data so that we could get this as our final result. So this involved getting the total mass of cosmetics sold in California. And so to do this, we used the Nielsen Consumer LLC database, which includes lots of products from big box stores. We also needed the fraction of products in each category that contain PFAS. And for this, we used the Mintel and Skin Deep databases, basically took the products that contain a PFAS ingredient, divided by the total number of products in that category. We also needed the concentration of each PFAS ingredient in each product type. And for that, we used online product data, which if you've tried to find the exact concentration of ingredients and products online, that is a much more challenging task compared to finding just the ingredients in a list. Sometimes you'll see in an SDS, it might be a particular ingredient, and it'll give a range such as 5 to 50%, which is kind of a challenging metric or a piece of information to use. We also need to know how much fluorine was in each PFAS ingredient, and which PFAS ingredients are pre-PFAAs. And for this, we just use the chemical structures. Although there is also some experimental data online that helps aid us in understanding those two metrics. Okay, so now we're at the first poll question for today. So this is a true question. The PFAS we can quantify with available analytical methods are the same PFAS typically used in cosmetics? True or false?
True or false? So you just need to use your cursor and pick one. And we'll just let some more people vote. We'll keep this poll open for another few seconds till we get up to like 80% of people voting. I can't see who's voting which way, but I'm just trying to make sure a good number of people have voted. Great. That's all we need. So Logan, just tell us what the answer is. And
perfect. What was the result? I'm not seeing it on mine.
oh, I did not. Yeah, I haven't figured that tech part out yet. Yeah, it's false. The answer's false,
okay.
right? Yeah.
The answer is false. But typically, the PFAS that we can measure are different than the PFAS that are used in products, or at least in cosmetics. So now on to the results of all the math that we did. Basically, we had to make a lot of assumptions to fill in a lot of the data gaps. And so what we ended up with is ranges, because there were a lot of minimums and maximums, and there wasn't enough data for us to calculate a central tendency, means, or anything like that. So all we're going to see is a lot of ranges. So there's a lot of information on this screenshot, but what I want to point you to is the PFAS prevalence in product percentage and the average PFAS concentration in the product. And what we learned is that the prevalence of PFAS in California cosmetics is relatively low, less than 3%. The ranges for the average PFAS concentration is much higher. You can see that some of these range from 0 to numbers in the teens up to about 30%. This is because of the number of data gaps that are available online. Now we're looking at a bar chart of the number of product categories that each particular PFAS we found, all 40 of them, which different product categories or subcategories of cosmetics that they were in. And we found that there were 40 distinct PFAS ingredients in 16 cosmetic product subcategories, and some of them were only in one product subcategory. And then you can see up on the top here, and sorry for the blurriness, there's the big list, but that's okay. The PTFE is number 1, and it was in 15 of the 16 product subcategories. And this is where I'll note that if you want to look at the full breakdown, we provide all of the data in our journal article with a huge Excel spreadsheet that you can look at all the details if you're interested. And so as I mentioned, we had to make a lot of assumptions because of the data gaps that were available. And so the bars on this screen basically represent the uncertainty in our results. So we have 3 sub portions of this chart. We have on the top the total PFAS mass, the organic fluorine mass, and then the F chain mass on the bottom. And within each subcategory of cosmetics, the bars represent the uncertainty, the bottom dots represent our minimum estimates, and the top dots represent our maximum estimates. And overall, cosmetics sold in California during a 1-year period contained 650 to 56,000 kilograms of PFAS, including 330 to 20,000 kilograms of fluorinated side chains. And we care about these fluorinated side chains because they can become PFAAs, including during wastewater treatment, depending on the wastewater treatment. Now here on the screen, what you're seeing is the minimum and maximum mass results for the organic fluorine and the fluorinated side chains. And you can see that some of the colors really reign supreme and outmatch the rest. And overall, shaving creams and gels, hair care, facial cleansers, and sun care accounted for over 90% or a majority of the total organic fluorine, along with the total mass of PFAS in cosmetics. In contrast, makeup only accounted for less than 3% of the total fluorine. This was surprising to us because we hear a lot about PFAS in makeup, and so we were really curious about this subcategory, and it was less than we expected. And for a lot of our results, we put together all of the makeup categories, which includes blush, bronzer and highlighter, eyebrow, eyeliner, eyeshadow, face powder, foundation and concealer, lip cosmetics, and mascara all together to create this one makeup category that is less than 3% of the total fluorine, because of how such small percentages that they contribute. In addition, hair care products and facial cleansers contributed over 80% of the pre-PFAAs, whereas makeup contributed less than 1.6%. And while the mins and maxes changed a little bit from the left to the right, you can kind of see that the same subcategories are generally on the bottom, where they're in the largest percentages or the largest proportions of the results. So while we were not able to find organic fluorine or fluorine results for wastewater in California, we were able to find 3 papers that had results from wastewater in Europe, and so we couldn't make a direct comparison. But what it does tell us is that cosmetics can explain some of the total organic fluorine measured at the wastewater treatment plants. These left 3 bars are the 3 studies from Europe, and then the right bar is the estimated cosmetics contribution from our results. Obviously, our cosmetics cannot contribute more than 100% of the organic fluorine, and so that's why we lean towards it being at least the minimum, because of the number of assumptions that had to be made. You know, the range gets quite large. But for more of a direct comparison, we were able to look at the top assay wastewater measurements from 15 Bay Area wastewater treatment plants, compare that with, and that's on the left, and compare that to our results, which is on the right, and show that cosmetics contribute at least 4% of the precursor-derived PFAAs measured at wastewater treatment plants in the San Francisco Bay Area. You know, whether 4% is a substantial number to you, you can make that decision. Take that what you will. And what's important to note is that some of the ingredients were long fluorinated side chains that can form PFOA as a result. And so our takeaways are that cosmetics sold in California during a 1-year period cumulatively contain 650 to 56,000 kilograms of total PFAS, 370 to 37,000 kilograms of organic fluorine, and 330 to 20,000 kilograms of fluorinated side chains associated with PFAA precursors. Our estimates suggest that cosmetics may account for at least 4% of the precursor-derived PFAAs measured in wastewater, and over 90% of the PFAS mass from the shaving creams and gels, hair care, facial cleansers, sun care, lotions, and moisturizers. The sum of all 9 makeup subcategories accounted for less than 3%. So these ranges are obviously pretty large, and that's because of, as I mentioned, all the assumptions and the data gaps that exist out there, because it's hard to find good, very specific, meaningful data on product information. However, we would like to take this as an invitation for others to fill in some of those data gaps, learn more information, so we can help nail down stronger numbers and determine how cosmetics really contribute to wastewater treatment for PFAS load. And so, of course, it takes a lot of people to do work like this. And so on the left, we have our co-authors, we have some other SCP staff, and the other people that we'd like to thank outside of SCP. Down on the bottom is the link to our research paper, The Total Mass of PFAS in California Cosmetics in Environmental Science and Technology earlier this year. And a question that we have for the future as well is whether PFAS levels will go down due to AB 2771 in California, which was a cosmetics containing intentionally added PFAS ban in California as of 2025. So that hasn't happened yet. We're hoping that results afterwards can help determine how effective it is. However, textile ban of PFAS is also going into effect in California at that same time. So there'll be some confounding data that will, we'll have to piece apart. And so with that, thank you for listening today. We invite any questions, reach out to me. There's my email address, reach out to SCP. We have that link on the page as well. And if you're interested in working for us, there's a link for that as well. Otherwise, I look forward to hearing any questions.
Excellent. Well, there are quite a few questions. I'm going to start with one that I have, which is just when you're looking at the products sold or used, are they just household, or are you also, does it include like hair salons and hospitals and those kind of places that might be using a lot of those products?
It did not include professionally used products, so it was all household, so like normal consumers.
Okay. So a lot of people are wondering about all the resources and those databases that you mentioned, and so is that all accessible through the report? You had the link on one of your slides with the report. Is all that detail accessible through that?
We have, yeah, so a majority of the information is available. So like the first layer of data that you receive when you use those databases, we don't have posted, but the actual results, the kind of first level of meaningful like data put together, synthesis, if you will, is available in a huge Excel spreadsheet, which is the supporting information that's attached to the paper, which yeah, I think anybody will find meaningful. And then we also provide more information about all these data sources that we use in the paper. And if you have any questions of finding data, just let us know. Some of them are more challenging than others. I believe it's the FDA's database that we had to create a partnership with. Because it's not public. However, I don't know the details of getting a hold of all that data for that one, but Mintel and Skin Deep, most of it is public.
Okay, great. Here's one. How many of the PFAS included in the subsequent calculations that you mentioned on slide 5 are detectable with method 1633? Any of them? How many? Any?
That one I do not know about that particular method. So I can't respond to that one really. My understanding is that most of the PFAS that we are able to measure are generally the alkyl acids. However, what were the ingredients were more like aligned with the fluoropolymer type PFAS. So I can't speak to that particular method.
Right. So doing the top assay and the total organic fluorine helps find those unmeasurable ones. So let's see. The relationship between industrial flows and the amount of precursor PFAS at wastewater treatment plants. That study was in the Bay Area, but you think that's generalizable to most treatment plants? Is there anything in particular different about those treatment plants in the Bay Area, or are they pretty standard?
In terms of extrapolating it to other areas, I would like to think that the Bay Area is pretty representative, but I haven't looked at the details so much to be able to give a good impression.
Have you all been looking at also septic systems and the discharge of cosmetics through septic systems and any resulting contamination there?
No, that's not something we've looked at. We assumed that, except for the propellant, we assumed that all PFAS and products ended up down the drain and made it to the wastewater treatment plants.
So maybe in California, there's not a lot of people on septic, I guess, maybe.
Can you repeat that? There's not a lot of what?
Septic systems in California then? So most wastewater ends up at a treatment plant in California? Or, because here in New England, we have a good percentage of homes are on septic and not connected to a treatment plant.
I just don't know about that one, just because that was a detail that would really just make the calculations very challenging. And so I'm not really sure, because of that assumption that we had to make, I'm not really sure how common septic systems are here.
Okay, here's a good one. So you you said makeup counts for less than 3% of the total fluorine. Is that because just volume wise, you use a lot less makeup than you do, body wash and shaving cream and that sort of thing? Is it just a volume type of a situation?
I think that makes sense as a good speculation. We did have to deal with some of the data we got was not by mass, but came in volume. But we did end up converting everything into mass using densities of products, and assuming that the products that we only got volumes for had similar densities to the rest that we had information for. I think that's a good speculation for sure, but we didn't calculate volumes. I think that some of the information we got was included volumes, but I don't believe all of it did.
Okay. In general, do you know, are all these precursors and things that are in the cosmetics and personal care products, are they mostly, when they become fully fluorinated, are they mostly just all short chain at that point, or are there some of them that are the longer chains when they've broken down? You did mention PFAA, which is a C8, so that's pretty long. Are there other?
Yeah, so I believe the ingredient list includes a 7, 8, and 9 carbon fluorinated side chains. quite a few of them were shorter as well, but those longer ones are, I think, the ones that we're maybe more concerned about. So it didn't seem like the ingredients were following any particular exact range.
Okay.
Like there didn't seem to be a cutoff, I guess maybe we could say.
Okay. So yeah, there's definitely comments people are making that they're disturbed by the, the number, the range of all these products that have PFAS in them. Let's see. How about, did you account for, or does the data account for, everybody's buying stuff online now a lot. So, a lot of it's not going through brick and mortar stores. So does the data reflect all that online purchasing too? Or not?
Yes, because I believe Cleria is fully online. So some of the data sources were, some of the data sources looked at online resources and some looked at brick and mortar store resources. So it does account for both.
Okay. Oh boy, there's a lot of them. I guess the last question will just be about, can you just talk a little bit more about the product ban in California and what is covered in that and not covered in it, in terms of the sale, and is it just the consumer products or?
Let me. I don't remember the definition of cosmetics that they use. I think, all I know is that it's the intentionally added PFAS. However, it's unclear as to how it will be enforced at this time. So that's just a big question at this point, since it's still a couple months away. But I put on the screen so that people can look. It's AB 2771 if you want to get the details.
Okay, so I think in the interest of time, we're going to have to move on, but thank you so much, Logan. And his slides will be on the NMO website. I'll send an email out once everything's posted, and then you'll be able to find the report and the paper that was published and all of that through the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our next presenter, which is Anne Treval. Oh, I forgot to ask her how to pronounce her name.
Cavalier.
Travelier. She's worked for Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy for 13 years now. She's one of 2 regional industrial pretreatment program specialists within the emerging pollutants section of the Water Resources Division. In her current role, she oversees the industrial pretreatment program PFAS initiative for 4 out of the 9 Water Resource Division district offices. And she's got her environmental science degree, Bachelor of Science from Bowling Green State University, and a master's in environmental policy from the University of Michigan. So before Anne goes, we're going to launch the other poll. So with that, where does she work? That just is a simple, easy one, just to make sure people are paying attention. So I just need, we'll let people vote here so we can, I'm having trouble seeing how many people have voted. Yeah, we need a few more people to vote. So just vote. Silly poll. Where does Anne work? Which of these? California, EPA, Michigan, or consulting firm CDM Smith? Okay, I need a few more people to vote. I can just see the percentage of people that have voted. So I want it to get up a little bit higher. We'll let it sit there for just a minute or less, a few seconds more. Perfect. All right, I'm going to close that. The answer was Michigan. And with that, take it away, Anne. I'll mute myself and be quiet.
You can see my screen and everything?
I can.
Okay, woohoo! All right, well, thanks
Yeah.
everybody.
It's all good, and I can hear you well too, so.
Great. Lovely. Well, thanks everybody. Good to be here. So I'm gonna talk about how we're reducing PFAS here in Michigan to our wastewater treatment plants. And so this graphic here shows the different strategies and initiatives that the emerging pollutant section has in place for regulating and monitoring PFAS across our Eagle Water Resources Division varying programs in order to protect the public health and the environment, mitigate risks, and identify and control PFAS sources. So other divisions within Eagle address other media such as drinking water and contaminated sites. So today I'm going to discuss the Industrial Pretreatment Program PFAS initiative and touch briefly on our municipal MPDS permit strategy for PFAS. So first, just a reminder, in case people don't know, here in Michigan, we do have PFAS criteria. We have surface water quality values for the 5 PFAS that are shown here. And so these are the values that allow the state to regulate surface water discharges of PFAS. And PFOS here has been the main regulatory driver for our municipal wastewater discharges. So you can see how low it is, 11 or 12 parts per trillion. And what I mean by drinking and non-drinking, so if your wastewater treatment plant discharges to the Detroit River, for example, the Detroit River is used as a drinking water source for drinking water plants. So that particular wastewater treatment plant would have to meet a PFAS criteria of 11 parts per trillion, as opposed to a wastewater treatment plant that discharges to a surface water body that's not used for drinking water. They would have to meet 12, which when we're talking parts per trillion, not a huge difference here. And we also have groundwater cleanup criteria protected of drinking water for the 7 PFAS that are shown here. And we do have a compliance strategy to address PFAS discharges from public and private groundwater facilities. But I'm not going to be talking about it as today's presentation, but the link to the document is included on the last slide. All right, so to talk about the Industrial Pretreatment Program PFAS initiative. This was launched in February of 2018. At the time, we had 95 wastewater treatment plants with approved pre-treatment program. Since then, we have added 4 more that have either developed an IPP or in the process of developing a pre-treatment program. And so for our initiative, we asked that our treatment, well, we didn't ask, we required because of that criteria. We didn't ask, we required our treatment plants to look for sources of PFAS within their collection systems. They were required to evaluate their industrial users and other sources such as contaminated sites or were places where AFFF may have been used. And then they were to sample these sources. Either they could do collection system sampling or just to go ahead and sample, you know, that chrome plater or that paper mill. And so if they sampled those sources and that particular industry was discharging PFOS above the screening criteria, which we used as 12 parts per trillion for PFAS, so the water quality value, that triggered the wastewater treatment plant to then sample their own effluent. And if the wastewater treatment plant effluent had PFAS at or above 50 parts per trillion, we require them to sample their biosolids. And so once the treatment plant identified industrial sources, they were responsible to work with those industries to reduce, control, or eliminate the PFAS from that industrial discharge. And so we have wastewater treatment plants that with sources that they have ongoing effluent monitoring requirements along with status reports that are due to Eagle on their progress made with their PFAS sources. And we took this approach rather than having the wastewater treatment plant sample their effluent first to then have to look for a source. We wanted to know where the PFAS was coming from so that the treatment plant can work with that source. And so we got to the same endpoint this way, but with greater knowledge. So in August of 2020, we compiled the industrial user data that was submitted through the initiative and compiled it and released it in a report detailing the identified industrial sources of PFAS to the treatment plants. We lovingly refer to it as the source doc. And this table here is a summary of our findings. It represents our best efforts to compile, organize, and summarize the information we had at the point in time. So that's essentially what footnote number 1 is saying. And just a reminder, we define source as those industries that are consistently exceeding the screening level of 12 parts per trillion for PFAS. So one bad sample doesn't automatically make a facility a source. And in terms of impact on wastewater treatment plant effluent, it really depends on factors such as the size of the wastewater treatment plant, the PFAS loading from each industrial source, and how much dilution is occurring from domestic wastewater within the collection system. And so we are working on a few updates to the source doc. I've highlighted here 3 new categories that we're adding: septage, leather tanning and finishing, and transportation equipment cleaning. So we hope to have that posted by the end of the year, but these numbers that are listed here in the table are our most up-to-date numbers. So what are the methods that the various industrial sources of PFAS are using to reduce or eliminate their PFAS discharge to the wastewater treatment plant? So here we're looking at PFAS treatment systems for facilities that discharge to wastewater treatment plants or are indirect dischargers. And we've also included 2 methods instituted by wastewater treatment plants to limit PFAS from entering the collection system. So you can see here that most facilities are using granular activated carbon or GAC. We have some industrial users that have conducted cleaning within the facility, or they've swapped out chemical products, or they've actually just disconnected their discharge to the wastewater treatment plant, so they probably are pumping and hauling. We have some industries using a combination of GAC and ion exchange resin. We also have 3 instances of either the treatment plant or the industrial user bulkheading the sewer. 3 of our wastewater treatment plants have imposed a limit on the amount of wastewater that the industrial user can discharge each day. And we also have examples of some of the destruction technologies that I'm sure some of you have heard about. So we have surface active foam fractionation and a supercritical water oxidation. And lastly, I want to highlight that one of our industries is in a combined sewer system. They are actually treating their stormwater using an in situ type of treatment prior to it entering the collection system and going to the wastewater treatment plant. And a lot of these GAC systems that were installed, they were just for temporary discharges to a wastewater treatment plant and are no longer in use. So like construction dewatering, or just a temporary discharge from an industry to address their PFAS discharge. So now we're looking at just the industrial users, but like who is treating in terms of the type of wastewater that's being treated for PFAS. So metal finishing wastewater is our most prevalent of wastewater treated, followed by contaminated sites and centralized waste treaters, just a smattering of landfills. So it's kind of all over the board here. So due to that, the variety of ways that industries have reduced their PFAS, this has resulted in reductions of PFAS in wastewater treatment plant effluent and in significant reductions of PFAS in the wastewater treatment plant biosolids. So this table shows the reduction of PFAS in effluent and biosolids for 5 wastewater treatment plants that we identified back in 2018 through the initiative that we considered to have industrially impacted biosolids, and the significant reductions that have been achieved through the implementation of source control. So 4 of the 5 original treatment plants here, they've seen an over 95% reduction in their concentrations of their biosolids in the 4 years since the implementation of the initiative. So this is kind of a slide we love to share because it really just shows that source reduction works. And this is another same sort of data. This is for another set of wastewater treatment plants. So these facilities did not have industrially impacted biosolids that you can, see here in the 2018 biosolids row, but they did have really elevated effluent for PFOS above our criteria. And so we're still seeing reductions due to source control in their effluent. And so many of these, are meeting the water quality value or are still, number 74 there is at 14, so just above our water quality value. So clearly more work needs to be done. All right, Jennifer, poll question.
All right, you're keeping me on my toes here. Okay, the last poll question here. Which is a common source of PFAS to wastewater treatment plants? Landfills, chrome platers, centralized waste treaters, pulp and paper mills, all of the above. So folks can do the poll. Just want some more people to weigh in here. So while we're letting people answer here, I want a few more people to vote. I had a question, so I'm going to butt in right now since we have a pause here. The contaminated sites, what is the source that, you list them as a source of influent to wastewater treatment plants, but what are they sending there? What's a contaminated site?
So a contaminated site would be like a former metal finisher, a former landfill, a former chemical manufacturer. So these are all, sites where an industry existed that used PFAS, and the industry is no longer in business, but either there's contaminated groundwater that's entering the sewer system, or there's contaminated stormwater, or, we've got some old leaky systems in Michigan. So, there's just potential infiltration that's getting into the sanitary sewer and making its way to the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, so just tell us the answer. Is it all of the above, or was it? It was.
Yes,
okay.
All of the above. These are all very common sources, at least here in Michigan, of PFAS to wastewater treatment plants.
And just explain a little bit, centralized waste treater, what's that one? And now I'm going to myself.
That's a common industry here in Michigan. So centralized waste treaters are industries that take various disgusting wastes. They're not a landfill, but they take different types of, they could take plating waste, they could take landfill leachate, they take oily waste, all kinds of waste, and they basically are a receptacle to then they treat it, separate out the whatever can be salvaged, and then they discharge then to a wastewater treatment plant. They're very common in Southeast Michigan. Many of our centralized waste treaters discharge to the Great Lakes Water Authority. Does that help answer that question?
Yes, I had muted myself, so yes, carry on. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks. All right. So kind of picking back off with those previous tables that I have, this is just a graph that's showing in a log scale the annual average effluent concentrations of PFAS for those 10 wastewater treatment plants. And so that you can see that PFAS levels have declined over time due to source control, but there's certainly some variability that occurs due to the type of sources the treatment plant is working on. So that red line there is showing our water quality value. And so I'm going to highlight these two wastewater treatment plants moving forward and kind of tell you a little bit more about their stories. So highlighting here, this is, I just showed you their effluent reductions. Here is their biosolids reductions that you can see over time, also in a log scale. So you can see that wastewater treatment plant 92, they're doing a good job. They've been able to get below our mitigation threshold for PFOS and PFAA, which is 20 parts per billion. Wastewater treatment plant number 57 still has got a little bit of work to do. So looking closer at the effluent at the wastewater treatment plant number 57. So this treatment plant identified a chrome plater. It is their only industrial source of PFOS. So it's their main and only source. And this wastewater treatment plant required the plater to install treatment for PFAS. You can see here back in 2017. So you can see that, they started out, the plater was discharging 2,000 parts per trillion of PFOS. They instituted GAC, and since then they have, kind of gone up and down, but they're low enough where it's allowed the wastewater treatment plant to see reductions in their effluent and their biosolids. And so this graph is showing the PFAS levels in fish in the receiving stream that wastewater treatment plant 57 discharges to. So we've seen an 87% reduction in PFAS in smallmouth bass in the Holloway Reservoir, which is where this wastewater treatment plant discharges over time. So jumping back to wastewater treatment plant number 92, they also identified a chrome plater back in 2018 as a major source of PFAS, and they required the plater to install pretreatment. So that was that first green dashed line. And so you can see the drop in PFAS levels from the source control. But then in 2021, the treatment plant identified a sister plant to this chrome plater as a source of PFAS. This sister plant was a newer chrome plater. They never used PFOS. They started production after the PFOS ban. They've only ever used 6,2-FTS. But for some reason in 2021, this sister plant had a spike of PFOS. And so still unknown why that happened. The hypothesis is that potentially plating racks from the first plant where they used PFOS were run through this sister plant, but that has not been confirmed. But again, either way, once this second plant was identified, the treatment plant required GAC. And so the effluent just further declined in the PFAS levels from the second GAC installation. And again, this is fish data that we have. So Norton Creek is where this particular wastewater treatment plant discharges to. So we can see the drop of PFAS within the surface water from that source control. And then again, the graph is showing fish results. Again, further declining of PFAS levels in the fish due to source control. This is just focusing in on largemouth bass and the levels that we've seen decline over time. So we've seen 90% reduction in average PFAS concentrations in our largemouth bass in the Huron River and Kent Lake due to source control. So just to illustrate the success of the IPP initiative and in reducing PFAS in the environment, in July of 2024, we've had 91% of our IPP wastewater treatment plants. They were in compliance with PFAS water quality values, and that's just in comparison to only 72% back in December of 2019, which was a little over a year of the start of the initiative. And so since implementation of the IPP initiative and the biosolids interim strategy, we've seen the mean and median values of PFAS in biosolids decrease. The most significant reductions were achieved when industrial discharges were targeted by IPP for source control back in 2018. And as illustrated in the table, we continue to see a downward trend in concentrations. All right, wrapping up here, talking a little bit about our municipal strategy we have for our wastewater treatment plants. We started phasing in PFAS effluent limits into NPDES permits starting in October 1st of 2021. We have periodic monitoring requirements. The frequency is based on PFAS effluent concentrations. Excuse me, and that our treatment plants with IPPs and with an effluent limit will need to establish local limits for those pollutants. And any treatment plants without an IPP, excuse me, that are found discharging PFAS at concentrations of concern in effluent or biosolids will be required to investigate potential sources and develop minimization plans. So just a quick look at like PFAS local limits. So most of them are setting a local limit for PFOS. These have ranged from 12 to 192 parts per trillion. We've got a range of safety factors. And most of them are using the industrial user contribution method. It allows for a larger pie for our industries. And these are concentration-based limits rather than a pounds-based limit. So we have 10 wastewater treatment plants with approved local limits for PFOS in Michigan. A number of our treatment plants already have developed and implemented a PFAS PMP. And so we have wastewater treatment plants that are still working towards meeting effluent and biosolids requirements. And so this kind of just gives a high level of what we require in a PFAS PMP and the various things we want them to look at. And then just a catch-all, Michigan is doing a lot when it comes to PFAS. And so here are just a slide of links to take you to a variety of different things that we're working on. And here is my contact information. And that's it.
Great. Well, thank you, Anne. That was a lot of great data. It's amazing that just putting a control at one chrome plater can make such a difference. So those treatment plants where there was big changes, were they all just like single source facilities? How about when you got a lot of inputs?
Yeah, so most are, the 5 that we restricted their land application, I think 4 of them were single source chrome platers, and they're small wastewater treatment plants. And the chrome plater makes up a particularly large discharge flow to the wastewater treatment plant. But obviously, you know, Michigan is home to the Great Lakes Water Authority. You know, they have 50 some sources of industrial sources of PFAS, but they also benefit from being a 600 MGD plant and benefit from dilution. So, you know, when a wastewater treatment plant has multiple sources, we kind of tell them they should prioritize the highest loading to get the most bang for their buck. And I think it depends on the type of source of like how easy can you install pretreatment. It might be a challenge if it's at a contaminated site versus a plater.
So someone did comment though, isn't treatment kind of expensive for these companies? And, you know, are they able to absorb it?
Yeah, treatment is expensive. Yes. Right. It's the cost of doing business. I mean,
right. Or
It's
needs to
the
be.
industry's take on the cost of paying for the treatment.
Someone has a clarifying question on slide 10, so I don't know if you want to flip back, but what changes were implemented for these wastewater treatment plants that created the big decrease in PFOS? But the change wasn't necessarily in the treatment plants, it was at the facilities discharging to them, right? Like there wasn't any change at the treatment plant itself. It was changes were made to the people discharging to the
Yes.
treatment plant.
Yes. So, right. So, the industry's discharging to the wastewater treatment plant used any variety of these methods to reduce the PFAS from the discharge, like that chrome plater put in GAC to reduce how much PFAS was discharged, which then resulted in the wastewater treatment plant effluent decreasing in the amount of PFAS being discharged.
Okay, here's a follow-up question to the GAC one, or the treatment one, which is what's happening to all the stuff that's collected in these treatment systems, and where's that stuff going?
Yep. Well, so that's not something we particularly track, but right, that is the problem. That is the problem with some of this, where that GAC is likely going to go to a landfill, right? So, there's a lot of encouraging signs out there with the destructive technologies, because we don't want to keep moving PFAS around. Like that's not what we want to do. But yeah, that is an issue that is a real concern.
Okay, several people are wanting to know their water quality objectives there and just how they were derived. Is there background on that somewhere, or
So
where they came from?
I'm not a toxicologist. So you can go to, you can Google our Rule 57. It's a narrative standard, which is how we derive these criteria. So I would just encourage you to Google. You can find our Eagle Rule 57 page that has contact information on it for Kevin Cox, who is the supervisor for the water toxics unit, and he is a toxicologist, and he will gladly talk to you about how these numbers were derived.
Okay. Well, here's kind of a basic question, but I actually have it as well because I'm not familiar with it. What is bulkheading of a sewer or a sewer connection?
Oh, you basically just close that discharge. You cut off that sewer line to the wastewater treatment plant. You're disconnecting them, that industry, from discharging to the sewer.
Okay, and then I'm kind of jumping around here, but that's because the questions are kind of jumping around as people type them. Biosolids above the screening levels or whatever, what ends up happening to those? Where do they end up going, do you know?
Yeah, so our criteria here in Michigan, we get to it. So if you have PFAS or PFOA at 20 parts per billion, you're still above 20 parts per billion, below 100 parts per billion. You are still allowed to land apply in Michigan, but you have to mitigate. You have to land apply at the half rate. If you have biosolids where your PFAS and PFOA is greater than 100 parts per billion, you are not allowed to land apply. You have to have alternative disposal, which is typically a landfill. So if you're at over 20 but below 100, you can still land apply. You just have to mitigate, and you also have to sample your effluent, and you also have to look for industrial sources.
Okay. There was that one facility, not the treatment plant, but the upstream person that was using supercritical water oxidation. And some people are wanting to know a little bit more about just how that actually, do we know if it works well? What kind of volume are they trying to deal with? And
So this,
Yeah.
I believe it's a centralized waste treater on the west side of the state, and it's in an area that I don't handle. I believe they're taking landfill leachate. So I would have to get you in touch with my colleague, my counterpart who handles that area, because I'm not totally sure on the situation happening there.
Okay, stay on that slide because there's another question there. So we did the bulkheading, which is basically just cutting off the discharge, which is the same as like in the second one where it says / disconnect. That would be the same. Disconnecting and bulkheading would be the same.
Well, bulkheading a sewer is basically like you put something in that sewer to stop all flow to it.
Okay.
So it's a little different than disconnecting.
Okay. Okay, but go down a couple more. Lining sewers. What is that? How does that affect PFAS discharging?
Yeah, so
What's going on there?
If you got a leaky system, so if you have contaminated groundwater, contaminated stormwater, or just any sort of contamination that's penetrating a sewer line that has cracks or holes in it, lining that sewer will then prevent that infiltration or that contaminated groundwater from then getting into the sanitary line, which goes to the wastewater treatment plant. That's what we mean by lining a sewer.
Okay, so here's another question some people are asking. So the program seems to be focused on, doing the industrial pretreatment, but do the treatment plants themselves also have standards that they have to meet and deal with, or is it really just going upstream?
Yep. So, our permitting strategy is applying to all NPDES municipal facilities. So it applies to if you have an industrial pretreatment program, if you don't have a pretreatment program, but you're an EPA major, which means you have a design flow greater than 1 MGD, or if you're a treatment plant that's a minor that you have impacted biosolids or effluent, your NPDES permit will require effluent monitoring. It may have an effluent limit in it. It will require, pollutant minimization plans.
Okay. Did the state do the testing and the analysis and pay for that at these treatment plants?
Nope.
No.
No, the initiative, when it was launched in 2018, it just targeted the IPPs. So they are the ones that took on the cost associated with this. Some of them do back charge the industry. So say you've got a chrome plater, that's your source. Sometimes that chrome plater also has to pay for the wastewater treatment plant sampling, in addition to the chrome platers sampling that they're required to do by the wastewater treatment plant. But we targeted the IPPs because, one, they have a dedicated funding mechanism, which is the pretreatment program, and they are the wastewater treatment plants that are likely to have the common industries associated with PFAS use.
Okay. Yeah, lots of questions about the chrome platers, but how is the PFAS entering the wastewater at a chrome plater? Because I thought a lot of it was the chrome platers it's the fume suppressant. It's kind of going up their air system and more like released to the outside. So how's it getting in the wastewater?
Yeah, so if you're using so the PFAS is used as a fume suppressant to control hexavalent chrome. So it does go up the fume hood and onto the roof, and then likely contaminates the stormwater, which we have no whole other strategy to deal with, that discharge. But PFAS is sticky, right? So it's sticking to, even though it's in the plating tanks, it still is ending up in the wastewater that is discharged, because a lot of metal finishers, right, you're treating, their existing pre-treatment is to treat for metals before they discharge to wastewater treatment plant. That PFAS that's making its way along in all the various plating baths is still there at the end of the pipe, and it's still in the wastewater.
Okay. So people are asking questions on topics that are going to be addressed in future webinars. So a lot of people want to know more about GAC and where it goes and what's happening to it. And we actually are having somebody from, what's the big carbon company? But Calgon Carbon or whatever, presenting in a couple of weeks, I think October 2nd, in that webinar. And then someone's wondering about biosolids and crops and that sort of thing. And we are having folks from Maine that have a big program with their farmers are going to be presenting on that topic. I think that's November 6th. So we do have some webinars coming up to follow up on some of these other questions. Let's see. Okay, so people are wanting to know, you had those wastewater treatment plants with the great results. Were they large volume treatment plants or kind of small treatment plants compared to other treatment plants that you have?
Yeah, they ranged from kind of all over. I would say the greatest reductions we have seen are at our smaller wastewater treatment plants, where their industrial contribution flow makes up a larger percentage of their overall flow to the plant. So like they're not getting as much dilution from non-domestic sources. Does that make sense?
I was reading other people's questions, so I wasn't. Yeah. Repeat that answer again.
Just that, yeah, I mean, like most of these reductions are at our smaller to mid-size wastewater treatment plants. So like your 0 to 5, 6, 7 MGD plants. You know, our large plants, our 10 to 20 MGDs, they are just benefiting from a lot of dilution from non-domestic, or excuse me, from domestic sources, like residential. So their industrial contribution does not make up a larger slice of their flow overall to the treatment plant.
Okay, somebody's wondering, this is a good one. What percentage of the wastewater treatment plants in Michigan currently have land application restrictions because of the exceedance with the biosolids? Or is most biosolids still able to be applied, or is most not being applied? Or how's that working in Michigan these days?
Right, since those original 5, which have been able to, I believe all but one are able to land apply now, we have not restricted anybody since those 5. We haven't had anybody, we don't have anybody above 100 parts per billion for PFOS and PFOA in biosolids.
How about analytical methods? Do you require particular analytical methods are used for for this testing?
Yeah. Well, so you all probably know that 1633 has been approved by EPA. So Eagle cannot require 1633 to be used until it is formally promulgated into the code of, I can't remember the long name, but 40 CFR 136 is where they formally promulgate approved methods. So we have told wastewater treatment plants that they can use 1633. You know, right now they're using either the EPA 537.1 modified method, or they're using the ASTM D7979 method. So they are welcome to choose whatever method they want. They are required to have a reporting limit of 2 parts per trillion, and they are required to analyze for 28 PFAS. But once 1633 is promulgated, that will be the method that we require, which will be 40 PFAS analytes.
Okay. Here's just a more general question that someone's wondering about is, your wastewater treatment plants, are they all discharging to rivers and surface water, or are any of them, lagoon and contributing to groundwater contamination, or is it mostly all surface water discharges?
So we only have 2 municipal wastewater treatment plants with IPPs that discharge to groundwater. The rest of the IPPs discharge to surface waters of the state. So, a Great Lake, the Detroit River, an inland lake, river stream. So we do have a groundwater discharge strategy here. So I would encourage you to check that out. It will go over private and public groundwater discharges and how we're handling PFAS from those facilities.
Okay. So I'm going to go back up. I think I went through most of the wastewater treatment plant ones from Ann's presentation. I'm going to circle back to a couple that were outstanding for Logan, if you want to unmute yourself. Does California have a list of, PFAS free? Are there PFAS free cosmetics that we trust? Did you guys do sampling? And do we know for sure some things are PFAS free? And is there a list of those?
So we didn't do that, but I believe the environmental working group has tools to look up PFAS-free cosmetics, I believe.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the skin. I don't know if Cleria has a way to search in that way, but maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think there's several people wanting to know if there's a place they can go to find things that don't have PFAS in them. But that's always the question here, because if you don't do actual analysis, it's hard to know for sure.
Yeah, I guess I could add that look for products that have ingredient lists, and look for anything that has any of the ingredients with fluor in it, like FLUOR. And if you see that, it's probably a PFAS. And then if you're looking to, get products without those, just ignore those products. At the same time, it only came out, I don't think we got an overall percentage, but odds are that a product that you get is not going to have PFAS in it, but that is because the overall category prevalence was, 103% for each of them. So I think looking at the ingredient list, looking for the transparent products is probably the best way to go.
Great. All right. Well, I'm just going to turn my camera on for a sec here just to say I think we're going to wrap up now. We're just a minute or two before 3, so that's our end time. So I really want to thank both Logan and Ann for their presentations today. And just a reminder that we will be posting PDFs of their presentations on the NMO website probably sometime next week, and I will send an email out once they are posted. So you'll get that. And thank you again to Ann and Logan, and I'm gonna end the webinar, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.